start with this. Well, IBF light heavyweight champion Artur Beterbiev dares, quote-unquote, Noodles Kovalev to accept fight challenge. He was quoted as saying, "Hey, Sergey Kovalev, after your rematch against the later Alvarez, you regained the WBO title and told the media you wanted a unification fight against me. I immediately agreed and instructed my promoter to contact your team and organize the fight. And despite your numerous interviews about your desire to fight me, you have still not accepted my invitation. So I'm addressing this invitation to you again, but this time personally and publicly. Sergey, let's put an end to our boxing relationship once and for all. No plausible reason could be given to prevent our fight from happening. A unification title bout is a top priority for any major boxing organization, and Top Rank would only welcome such a fight. In Russia, you were nicknamed Noodles, and in the US you named yourself Crusher. So which of these nicknames suits you best? It depends on your answer. Our fans are waiting for it. I am waiting for it. The clock is ticking. Now let me preface everything I'm about to say with this. In regards to Artur Beterbiev, devastating puncher, good fighter, world champion in the light heavyweight division. For a long time, I felt like Artur was getting a bit complacent. I mean, we know that he had some promotional issues. We know he was trying to get out of his contract with Yvonne Michelle. He had a brief stint on DAZN and subsequently crossed the street to Top Rank and ESPN. Things weren't quite stable for Artur for a while. And in that while, I felt like, you know, this guy's kind of complacent. Like, there's a lot of good fights in your weight class. There are a lot of champions there now. But I didn't really see a push from Artur, a big push, to unify with the other champions at the weight. There are 4 of them. One of them just so happens to be his domestic and professional rival. And I felt like, you know, Artur, his demeanor, he kind of seemed like the Joseph Parker of the light heavyweight division. This guy's just so polite. He's always smiling. He's always in a good mood. And, you know, that's fucking great.
Awesome.
It's great. But when you have a domestic and professional rival right there in your weight class who has a world title the same as you, is it really a lot to ask that you show some moxie, show some gusto, show some willingness to square off against that fighter? We all know about Artur and Sergey's history in the amateurs, that Artur, he just so happens to have beat him twice there. Sergey Kovalev, he alleges that, you know, he was robbed. Make of that what you will. But that's their history. So what I wanted to see from Artur was willingness to fight Sergey Kovalev. That, you know, the time for that fight is now, because neither one of you two guys are spring chickens. Artur's only a year younger than Sergey, and both of these guys are in their mid-30s. So the time is now to make something happen. And it appears that Artur got the memo, because here he is, and he's issuing out a public challenge to Sergey Kovalev. Interesting situation. You think about what's been going on with Anthony Yarde all these different weeks and months, that the fight never seemed quite ironed out. That really, even now, it doesn't quite feel official. There are a lot of reports circulating in regards to the fight. Now, supposedly, the proposed date for the fight is sometime in August on the 24th, where the last set of reports suggested that the fight might take place sometime in September. So you see that things really aren't quite ironed out. And, you know, I had a passing thought that from the moment the WBO ordered this thing, to the time that the purse bid got canceled, to the time that, you know, the purse bid got reordered, at any point in between that time, I wondered, did Main Events actually try to push for a unification fight? I mean, think about it. While all the details of that fight aren't quite being ironed out,
it's not done.
You think to yourself, what if Kathy Duva and Sergey Kovalev and the people over there at Main Events, what if they went to Paco Vericel, the president of the WBO, and they told that guy, look, this mandatory defense, it's got some issues. What if we decide that we want to unify with Artur Beterbiev? Could we get your blessing? I think they would have got Paco Vericel's blessing if that's what they had decided to do, which makes me wonder if they even tried. You know, it's one thing to say things in an interview when you got members of the media asking you questions. It's one thing to put on a brave face and say this and that and make it seem like that's a fight that you want. But it's behind the scenes that things really happen, where the wheels really are in motion. The mechanics to make a fight a reality. And I wonder, given how much time has been spent trying to secure this Anthony fucking Yarde fight. Purse bid gets ordered, purse bid gets canceled, deal gets reached, deal really isn't reached, not in a timely fashion. Purse bid gets ordered, purse bid gets canceled. I mean, this is what it's been. And what I'm wondering is if at any point, while this fight has been in the air, why not just shoot for a unification fight? It would trump this mandatory title defense, wouldn't it? And this is Sergey's professional rival. Sergey says he wants that fight, and here we have Artur saying that he wants that fight. So I'm just wondering, what was actually done to see this fight get made? Pay attention to the timeline of events and see if you see anything interesting, because I think about this thing and I think to myself, you know, Sergey won his title back in February of this year. That's when he won it back. That's when he had the Alvarez rematch, reclaimed it, and became a 3-time light heavyweight champion. That was in February. Now in March, that's when the WBO first ordered the Anthony Yarde fight. That mandate came down the following month in March. You think about that. Damn, they ordered this fucking fight months ago in March, and it still isn't quite official. You think about how many times things have fallen apart. The news isn't quite right. The fight isn't quite done. Frank Warren, he says he doesn't know what the fuck's going on. Okay, you think about that stuff. You think that, okay, so Sergey was last in action in February. The Anthony Yarde fight, that got ordered by the WBO in March.
And it's still not done.
And it's fallen apart a couple of times since then. At any point in time when the fight was falling apart, you have to wonder, what did main events do to look into that Beterbiev fight, to look into that and say, okay, look, things aren't quite working out with this thing. Let's see about this Beterbiev fight. Now, Beterbiev, he was last in action after the mandate came down. The mandate came down in March, and he was last in action in May afterwards against Kovalev. Now, you think about that, you know, okay, maybe before May, the window of opportunity, maybe it wasn't quite there. That's possible. But afterwards, okay, now, you got May. He took care of Kovalev in May, and you got June, and here we are approaching July. That's where we're at. And the Anthony Yarde fight is still not quite done. It's still not quite ironed out. We're seeing reports that suggest when the fight will happen. It's August 24th. That's supposed to be it, where before it was in September on some date. Now it's August again. Now it's in the summer again. All right, whatever the fuck, whatever. You think about that the fight still isn't quite official, whereas, you know, why don't you just go to Paco, tell Paco, look, this mandate, you know, this Anthony Yarde thing, it's not quite working out. Can we unify? Can we look into that? We've got two champions. They're willing to fight each other. There are no network issues because they both fight on the same platform. They both fight on ESPN. They both have ties to Top Rank. We can make it happen. Did Kathy Duva? Did Sergey Kovalev? Did the people at main events try? Because I see a window of opportunity there that at any point in time that the Anthony Yarde fight was posing difficulties, did they actually look into that Beterbiev fight? Now, as you can imagine, Sergey Kovalev himself has caught wind of these comments coming from what is the IBF champion, Artur Beterbiev. And he took to Instagram to address those comments. He had this to say. He said, I read the information on the internet that the holder of the IBF belt is aroused and wants a joint fight with me. So that's what I'll answer you about. Get up now. And according to the plan, I have a mandatory protection against Anthony Yarde. And that bit of it we already know, that he's in the midst of negotiations to face Anthony Yarde. But I reiterate, that fight isn't quite right. You know, it's not ironed out. So if you see that things aren't really going well with that, why not scrap that idea and say, you know what, fuck this guy. He'll still be there when I get back. Let's look into this
unification.
Let's look into this unification fight. Let's look into this Artur Beterbiev thing. I mean, Sergey himself said that he wanted that fight a couple of weeks ago, a couple of months ago. He said he wanted that fight, and the Yarde fight, it really isn't quite done. So the question remains: did the people at main events, did Sergey Kovalev, did they try to pursue this unification fight? You gotta wonder. You know, Chris Mannix, he released a tweet earlier today in regards to this whole situation. He said, Kovalev plans to move forward with the Yarde fight, per source, while his team will be ready for more serious negotiations if Kovalev successfully defends his title in August. This tweet from Chris Mannix is in direct correlation with the tweet we discussed in my previous video from Mike Kopinger, that there is a deal in place for Kovalev to square off against Anthony Yarde in August, but that fight is contingent on whether or not Kovalev can reach a deal with Canelo. That if he does reach a deal with Canelo, they'll scrap the Yarde fight, pay him some step-aside money, and go ahead with that Canelo fight. And what I'm thinking is, okay, if you can conjure up step-aside money for a Canelo-Alvarez fight, provided you reach a deal, then why don't you just conjure up some step-aside money for Artur Beterbiev? Because he wants to fight you, and this Yarde fight, I'm sorry to say, it doesn't appear to be getting anywhere. I mean, it got ordered back in March, and look at where we are now. You got step-aside money for a Canelo fight. Why can't you conjure up some to unify those titles and square off with your domestic and professional rival? I'm just not getting it. And what I don't like about the situation, in all honesty, is that the window of opportunity for Kovalev versus Beterbiev in the pros, the window of opportunity for that, it almost feels like it's closing. I reiterate, neither Artur or Sergey are spring chickens. The both of these guys are in their mid-30s. You go prioritizing a Canelo fight, for example, where does that leave the Yarde fight? You know, if he does fight Yarde in August, which I'm not convinced he will, because, you know, I'm still not convinced Yarde's team want that fight, but better still, if the fight comes off in August and Sergey retains his title, what does he mean to do thereafter? Does he mean to enter, you know, deep negotiations for a Canelo fight? I mean, what happens to the Beterbiev fight if he does? You understand? It's for this reason that it almost feels like, as long as people have been waiting, and it's been years, it has been years, as long as people have waited to see that fight play out in the pros, you know, feels like we might not get the chance. Feels like the window of opportunity is closing in a way. You know, because if it comes down to squaring off with Canelo or squaring off with Artur, I think that the main events people, I think that Sergey himself may prioritize that payday with Canelo over that domestic rivalry with Artur Beterbiev. And, you know, I don't know how I feel of that. I don't know how I feel about that. I got mixed feelings, okay? Because the fight between Sergey and Artur is actually a fight that I've been waiting for a very long time. And both guys, they would be on an even playing field with each other. They're both full-fledged light heavyweights. They're both world champions. It's the kind of fight that you want. It is the best of 175 against the best of 175. Now, Canelo, him being who he is, maybe he is one of the best boxers in the sport, but he hasn't established himself as one of the best light heavyweights in the sport. So I kind of feel like I'd rather see Kovalev versus Beterbiev first, before Canelo even comes into it. Hell, let Canelo get a tune-up fight at that weight before he decides to challenge Sergey. How about that? You know, let Canelo fight a top contender who's a full-fledged light heavyweight while he tries to acclimate for that Kovalev fight. In the mean in between time, Sergey and Artur can settle their differences, hash it out. I wouldn't mind seeing it happen in that sequence. I'm sure that there would be some backlash. You know, that if Canelo doesn't fight Sergey straight away, some people are going to try to say, no, you ducked Jamal and Golovkin and Andre. Yeah, you know, I mean, I'm sure there are going to be those people. But if what Canelo is doing is preparation for a Kovalev fight, I may be accepting of that. I might be. So long as, you know, he means business. And in the mean in between time, while he means business, Sergey, Artur, they can do what they've got to do against each other. Canelo gets the winner of the fight. I wouldn't mind seeing it happen that way, although that is quite a bit of idealism and wishful thinking. The reality of things is that Canelo Alvarez represents that big of a payday that most anyone would prioritize a fight with him instead of settling a domestic rivalry. I mean, that's what Amir Khan did. How many opportunities has Amir Khan had to square off against his domestic rival? Yet when faced with the proposition of a Canelo fight, what did he do? He ran right up there to 160, got his ass knocked the fuck out, got his ass paid. So you gotta wonder, you know, would Sergey Kovalev, would he be of a similar mindset that, well, you know, that Artur fight, that's gonna be there. Let me handle Canelo, because I stand to make a lot of money with Canelo, whether I win or I lose. Now, Kovalev probably figures that he'll win the fight because he's the naturally bigger guy, proven at the weight, 3-time light heavyweight champion, one of the most devastating punchers in the weight class. So he probably figures, yeah, it's an entirely winnable fight for me. There's an X factor in that fight, you know. There is an X factor. But we're just trying to delve into Sergey's mindset. What does he think? How would he approach the situation if he does fight Anthony Yarde in August, beats him, retains his title, and is faced with either a Beterbiev fight or a Canelo fight? The people at ESPN, let's be honest, the people at ESPN, you know, they've got to want that Beterbiev versus Kovalev fight. That's an in-house fight for them. No cross-promotional, no cross-network, none of that shit that stifles fights. Whereas with a Canelo fight, you know Canelo's the A-side. You know what he's going to want to do. He's going to want to bring the guy over to the zone. I mean, that's essentially where the fight would be. Sergey doesn't have the kind of marquee value to tell Canelo Alvarez what to do. So if you want to fight him, you've likely got to cross the street to DAZN to fight that guy. Artur, you ain't got to cross shit. You can have the fight right then, right there, against your domestic rival. It's a gunfight. One of the best goddamn fights the division's got to offer. One of the best goddamn fights boxing's got to offer. So I'll tell you the truth, that a part of me, I don't know how you guys feel about it, and you can feel free to disagree, but a part of me rather see that Beterbiev fight than that Canelo fight. A part of me. Hell, I wouldn't mind seeing Canelo fight fucking Callum Smith in the in-between time. But Sergey versus Beterbiev, I've waited for that long enough, and I want it. I want to see it. I think the people at ESPN want to see it also. I mean, as far as ESPN goes, their network, their deal with Top Rank, ESPN jointly benefit more from a Beterbiev versus Kovalev fight than they do from a Canelo versus Kovalev fight, because that fight would presumably be on DAZN, whereas the fight with Beterbiev, you can have it right then and there. You do what you got to do to make it happen. It goes down on ESPN. You get big ratings, you know, maybe you sell it as a pay-per-view. I mean, I think it's a pay-per-view worthy fight, in all honesty, I do. I don't know that there's a big enough demand for it, but in terms of quality, the best versus the best, that is what that fight is. Two of the very best the light heavyweight division's got to offer. And you can have it right there at ESPN. Whereas ESPN, Top Rank, they don't benefit as much from a Canelo fight because that fight would presumably be on DAZN. So if anybody's benefiting from that, it would be Golden Boy, it would be DAZN, and John Skipper and all of those guys. That's who benefits from that. So, you know, I'm not sure what's going to happen with this thing because a lot of news regarding Sergey Kovalev has been very topsy-turvy. It's hard to know what he's going to do next for a variety of reasons. But the feeling that I'm left with in light of this news is that I'd actually like to see Sergey fight Artur more than I'd like to see Sergey fight Canelo. In all honesty, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but that's how I feel about it.